Hernán Cortés was born in 1485 in the town of Medellin in modern-day Spain. At the age of 14, Cortés was sent to study Latin under his uncle-in-law in Salamanca. After 2 years, Cortés, tired of schooling, returned home to Medellin, much to the irritation of his parents, who had hoped to see him equipped for a profitable legal career. By the time news of the exciting discoveries of Christopher Columbus in the New World were streamed back to Spain, plans were made for Cortés to sail to the Americas with a family acquaintance, Nicolas de Ovando, the newly appointed governor of Hispaniola, but an injury he sustained prevented him from making the journey. Instead, he spent the next year wandering the country. He finally left for Hispaniola in 1504, where he became colonist. Upon his arrival in 1504 in Santo Domingo, the capital of Hispaniola, the 18-year-old Cortés registered as a citizen, which entitled him to a building plot and a land to farm. Soon afterwards, Nicolas de Ovando, the governor, made him a notary of the town of Azul de Compostela. His next 5 years seemed to help establish him in the colony, and in 1506, Cortés took part in the conquest of Hispaniola and Cuba, receiving a large estate of land and aboriginal slaves for his efforts from the leader of the expedition. At the age of 26, Cortés was made clerk to the treasurer with the responsibility of ensuring that the crown received the customary 1/5 of the profits from the expedition. The governor of Cuba was so impressed with Cortés, he became secretary for Governor Velázquez. Cortés was appointed captain general of a new expedition in October 1518, but was advised to move fast before Velázquez changed his mind. With Cortés's experience as an administrator and his impeccable rhetoric, he was able to gather 6 ships and 300 men within a month. Later in 1518, Velázquez put Cortés in command of an expedition to explore and secure the interior of Mexico for colonization. At the last minute, Velázquez changed his mind and revoked Cortés's charter. Cortés went anyway in 1519. He stopped in Trinidad, Cuba, to hire more soldiers and obtain more horses. Accompanied by about 11 ships, 500 men, 13 horses, and a small number of cannons, Cortés landed in the Yucatan Peninsula in Mayan territory. In March of 1519, Cortés formally claimed the land for the Spanish crown. Then he proceeded to Tabasco, where he met resistance and won a battle against the natives. In July 1519, his men took over Veracruz. By this act, Cortés dismissed the authority of the governor of Cuba to place himself directly under the orders of King Charles. In Veracruz, he met some of the tributaries of the Aztecs and asked them to arrange a meeting with Moctezuma II, the ruler of the Aztec Empire. Moctezuma repeatedly turned down. Leaving 100 men in Veracruz, Cortés marched on Tenochtitlan in mid-August of 1519, along with 600 soldiers, 15 horsemen, 15 cannons, and 100 of indigenous warriors. On the way to Tenochtitlan, Cortés made alliances with the Tatenocs and the Nahus. The Otomis and the then Tlaxcalans fought the Spanish in a series of 3 battles in 1519. In October of 1519, Cortés and his men, accompanied by 1,000 Tlaxcaltecas, marched to Chalyu, the second largest city in central Mexico. On November the 8th, 1519, they were peacefully received by Moctezuma II. Cortés learned that several Spaniards on the coast had been killed by Aztecs while supporting the Totonacs, and decided to take Moctezuma as a hostage in his own palace, indirectly ruling Tenochtitlan through him. Meanwhile, Velázquez sent another expedition led by Panfilo de Narvaez to oppose Cortés, arriving in Mexico in April 1520 with 1,100 men. Cortés left 200 men in Tenochtitlan and took the rest to confront Narvaez. He overcame Narvaez and convinced the rest of Narvaez's men to join him. On July 1st, 1520, Moctezuma was killed. Faced with a hostile population, Cortés decided to flee for Tlaxcala during the Noche Triste, June 30th to July 1st of 1520. The Spaniards managed a narrow escape from Tenochtitlan across the Taclopan Causeway, while their back guard was being massacred. After a battle in Atumba, they managed to reach Tlaxcala having lost 870 men. Cortés began a policy of attrition towards Tenochtitlan, cutting off supplies and subduing the Aztecs' allied cities. The siege of Tenochtitlan ended with Spanish victory and the destruction of the actual city. Finally, On the 13th of August, 1521, the Aztec Empire disappeared, and Cortés was able to claim it for Spain, thus renaming its old capital city, Mexico City. From 1521 to 1524, Cortés personally governed Mexico. Cortés initiated the construction of Mexico City, destroying Aztec temples in the process, and buildings, and then rebuilding on the Aztec ruins, in which became the most important European city in the Americas. Cortés's wife, Catalina Suarez, arrived in New Spain from sometime around summer of 1522, along with her sister and brother. His marriage to Catalina was at this point extremely awkward, since she was a kinswoman of the governor of Cuba, Diego Velázquez, who was now his enemy. Cortés had children with a variety of indigenous women at the time. Cortés's wife, Catalina Suarez, died under mysterious circumstances one night in November of 1522. In 1529, he then married a Spanish noblewoman, Doña Juana de Zúñiga. The marriage produced 3 children, including another son. From 1524 to 1526, Cortés headed an expedition into Honduras, where he defeated Cristobal de Olid, who had claimed Honduras as his own under the influence of the governor of Cuba. A few days after Cortés's return from his expedition, Ponce de León suspended Cortés from his office of governor of New Spain. Eventually, Cortés was exiled. Cortés then sailed to Spain in 1528 to appeal to King Charles. In 1528, Cortés returned to Spain. Cortés presented himself with great splendor before Charles V's court, denying he had held back on gold due to the crown. He showed that he had contributed more than the quinto required. He was received by Charles with every distinction and decorated with the Order of Santiago, in return for his efforts in expanding the still young Spanish Empire. Cortés returned to Mexico in 1530 with new titles and honors, but with diminished powers. On returning to Mexico, Cortés found the country in anarchy. After reasserting his position and reestablishing some sort of order, Cortés retired to his estates at Cuernavaca, about 30 miles south of Mexico City. In 1536, Cortés explored the northwestern part of Mexico and discovered the Baja California Peninsula. This was the last major expedition by Cortés. After his expedition of Baja California, Cortés returned to Spain in 1541. The emperor permitted Cortés to join him at the great expedition against the Algiers in the Barbary coast in 1541, which was then part of the Ottoman Empire. During this unfortunate campaign, Cortés almost drowned in a storm that hit his fleet. Becoming broke and in debt, he decided to return to Mexico in 1547. When he reached Seville, he was stricken with dysentery. He died in Seville province on December 2nd, 1547, at the age of 62.